Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Drew Polin. He is the CEO of OpDecision. Drew, how are you doing today, man?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking, Drew, and thanks for coming on the show today. Excited to have you share with our audience some lessons that you've learned in over 10 years of working in agency or using an agency channel sales strategy in your businesses. Before we jump into that, I would love for you to give our audience a little bit of background on yourself and let us know what you and the crew at OpDecision are up to these days.
Sure. So this background for company and myself, OpDecision is about an 11-year-old company. And our niche is we work with companies to focus on reducing costs with their current cell phone vendor. So what we do doesn't change the carrier, doesn't affect the contract. They still get billed directly, keep all the support services. We just leverage a methodology and intellectual property of things like unpublished rates, unique rate structures, promotional discounts, a lot of aspects of the industry that the carriers just don't publicize or market. Typically to cut on average at about 27% off our client spend with their current cellular solution. So it's a little bit of background about what we do and kind of what our focus is.
Nice. And Drew, a little bit on your company. What's the strategy, just so people have an idea, since we're going to be talking about what they should be thinking about with an agent channel sales strategy? Is that 100% of your business? What's the mix between direct and channel sales for you guys?
So at this time, channel sales is probably over 95% of where our clients are derived from. Mm-hmm. There is going to be a little bit of a push through the rest of the year, next year, to do a little bit of direct sales, which is actually going to fall predominantly on my shoulders. So it's not going to be a huge initiative. But we've been spending the last couple of years really kind of restructuring our internal management team and processes and really kind of getting myself out of the day-to-day side of the business, focusing on the business development sales side. Most of that is assisting our agent channel. But I should have some availability to do a little bit of direct sales, more so garnering referrals from current clients is going to be a predominant focus of that, but maybe a little bit of additional outreach on top of it.
Gotcha. So, as we mentioned at the top of the interview, you've been working and applying a channel sales strategy for a while. Obviously, it's a big part of your business at 95% of, the business you guys are currently doing. That may change a little bit, but tell us a little bit about why you think people should be thinking about channel sales for their business.
Sure. So there's a lot of reasons why people should be considering channel sales. Ultimately, the first thing that comes to mind is the overhead associated with going down that path. And actually, the better comment would be the lack of overhead needed. So ultimately, traditional sales, you have to hire a sales team, depending on the size of the team, a sales manager, or allocate, part of the leadership's team time to manage them. Oftentimes, space within the office, computers, phone, etc., and oftentimes salary on top of commission. With an agent channel strategy, what you're able to do is, depending on your appetite, you can almost have an infinite amount of people representing your organization or company or service to open up doors, to make introductions and do a revenue share with that individual. So it just creates a much different way to do business while eliminating overhead on trying to focus on growth and attaining new clients. And the other major element that we kind of find with it is what it's doing is most of the time you're getting a personal introduction through a relationship, either professional or a friendship or personal, which I find kind of gives a different dynamic to the sales opportunity. We're already kind of starting with a leg up and having a really good opportunity to earn that business. So that's kind of the first aspect of it. There are a lot of things a company needs to consider. Profit margin is really one of the primary that you need to take into account. What I find with the agent channel program is you do need to offer enough revenue of the profit or the overall gross to make it worthwhile for somebody to be willing to open up their Rolodex and make those introductions. So a lot of elements that need to be taken into account to identify if it's a fit for your organization. But again, I just find it's a phenomenal way to get a much stronger introduction into a sales opportunity, as well as potentially create a pipeline of almost infinite opportunities where you're not having to spend the time or resources to create those.
Yeah. It definitely makes a lot of sense there, Drew, in, how you could possibly scale more quickly because of, the lack of overhead and upfront investment. What are some of the other things you mentioned talking about, looking at your profit margins and your volume, and is there a good enough fit to where you could compensate agent channel sales partners? As we were talking about this offline, you mentioned another kind of qualifying factor people should think about before they jump into this model or employ the strategy is looking at, how niche down are they in their market, and do they have, complementary partners that make sense that are targeting the same decision makers. Tell us a little bit about, some of the thought process there that people should be going through before they consider whether this strategy is right for their business or not.
Sure. So let's tackle both sides of that. So the first part is the profitability. So ultimately, with my business, it's almost exclusively service driven. So again, not an overhead that you typically pick up by having products or manufacturing or storage or et cetera. So we are a unique type service-based company. So with that comes pretty significant profit margins. We're also virtual, which also again leads to a lower overhead with lack of office space and the other things that you have to put together there. So what we ended up identifying is, since we wanted to focus on making this the exclusive area of growth for us, is we ended up paying about 300% of what a typical revenue share or commission is for an introduction with an agent type program. And we did that so we could be top of mind and ultimately market behind that to our agent channel to show them what type of revenues they could earn if they just simply picked up the phone or sent an email to introduce us to somebody that fit the criteria of what a good potential client for us could look like. I have consulted for predominantly friends for other businesses where they were looking to see if we could help them recreate something similar. And there were a lot of successes, but there was also some failures. And really what the failures came around was two aspects. The first one is their margins were a lot tighter. So the type of revenue share percentage that they could put out there for marketing or pitch their agent channel could have been anywhere from 1% to 10%, which wasn't going to really capture a lot of people's interest and make it a top priority for them to open up their Rolodex.
Right.
So that's why profitability is really an important part of it, or at least marketing a way to make the commission sound significant, where maybe you're showing a percentage of the profit margin or whatever it may be, but there is some psychological and marketing components that can coincide with that. That's kind of the first side of it. The second side, which you had mentioned, was complementary type business or services that are selling into the similar types of decision makers that you need to get in front of. I find that's also really key. So if you're in an incredibly niche business that doesn't have a lot of complementary type services that surround it that are selling into the same decision makers, that just limits the pool of potential referral partners or agents that you can solicit, or at least do so with a really targeted focus on who you're trying to find and who typically would be the best person to lead you to an opportunity. So that's something else that you need to explore. For example, in our space, since we're in the cellular world, anybody who's in telecommunications, everything from your landline telephones, phone systems, hardware, anything that revolves around that is a perfect type of organization that can introduce us in, because we're typically dealing with the same decision maker with the same budgets. Also, companies that do sourcing and cost reduction, anything from office supplies to utility or whatever category of expertise they may have. Also, a really easy segue for them to make an introduction for a company like us into their decision maker, because really what we're doing is reducing expenses with a current solution.
Right.
So if a company has a really granular specific niche where there's not a lot of complementary type services that surround it, that have those types of relationships, that could ultimately pose a challenge to grow a larger type agent channel, but you still could really have, a focused, concentrated one that could still be really successful. Just most likely you would need another avenue or channel of type of sales, to hit your goals.
Yeah, just something to think about there as well. Awesome. Well, Drew, I love that.
All right, today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing, and we'll be shining the spotlight on Aegis Software, a company that makes software for manufacturing operations. Aegis was one of the first companies in their space to invest in search marketing, but as competition grew, their performance plateaued. To counter this, they hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. With unparalleled experience in inbound lead gen for B2B companies, Directive was able to increase Aegis's monthly online leads by 457%, while at the same time lowering their cost per lead by 147%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Some of the other challenges you mentioned as we were talking offline, the first was, creating trust with your agents as you start to build these relationships. And the other was, getting past that first, sure, I'll sign up as an agent, not a lot of commitment up front. Everything sounds good. I like the commission structure, but getting them to that first opportunity. Tell us a little bit about how you guys have managed to get over those first two hurdles and what people should be thinking about with some of those challenges.
Sure. So ultimately what the challenge is you listed out perfectly, is you're asking somebody to reach into their Rolodex or their relationships and introduce somebody that, let's be honest, they most likely barely know. So for what we do, we have a mechanism for development to bring on new agents. LinkedIn tends to be a phenomenal resource to meet people out of market and generate those conversations. And when you're paying a pretty significant shared revenue, it's really easy to set up those conversations and can have them all day long as often as I like. Right. And just like you said, it's really easy to convert somebody to sign off on paperwork. We don't have quotas or anything to become an agent, but then getting that first deal is really the milestone that you need to get past. And what we found is if you're dealing with an organization that has a team, it's really kind of drilling down and asking the sales manager or the leadership team, who is the one or two people on the team that are forward-thinking, have adopted new products or services, and is open to introducing their client to them? So that's one of the questions we'll typically ask if we bring on an overall organization as a partner, to really just find one or two people. Because what we find is it's just that first opportunity that you need to get. And once you can earn that first opportunity, you have somebody in that organization that's going to experience your product, service, sales process from start to finish. They're going to see their client or relationships reaction to that. Obviously, you need to deliver on what you do for a living for that person. And as long as you can execute, typically it's a warm and fuzzy experience, which they're then going to share with the rest of their coworkers, which should then really, I call it turning on the light switch, open up a lot more opportunities where people are going to start to look into the Rolodex and start to put a lot more thought and energy into who they can introduce you to. So that's really kind of on a team type level. On an individual level, you're dealing with the same type of struggle, especially if it's a business owner or somebody that has a huge book of business. They really value the relationships with their clients. So a lot of it is just a matter of building that trust. For us, we offer up however many references they would like to talk to, if it's agents or partners or even clients, and really just uncovering what you need to do to capture their interest and engage them to really have a comfort level to take that first opportunity. Part of what we do is we take a further step, and typically we'll take a look at their LinkedIn profile and their connections. And what we'll typically do is kind of harvest that, put together a short list of some of the contacts that they're connected to, the size company, et cetera, and then pair that with some case studies of clients that we have in that vertical industry and market, testimonial letters, send that over to them, see if they know that individual well enough where they're comfortable making an intro, but furnishing them with examples of other projects we've done in that industry or space or similar size organization, as well as making it very specific and very in their face on what that commission can look like. That's a big part of the strategy that we've uncovered that can try to help get us over that hump to get that first opportunity.
Yeah. Well, Drew, I think you share some really practical advice. Having been in, kind of a team-based channel sales in the past in my career in the office equipment industry, I can definitely relate to what you're talking about in kind of building trust within a team. I love the strategy that you're talking about there, and in kind of gearing them up and giving them some ammo to get that first deal and get them over the hump with as little friction as possible. I think that's great advice. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience in deploying this agent channel sales strategy. If anybody listening to this, Drew, would like to reach out to you, ask any follow-up questions, or just stay connected with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that, man?
So I guess there'd be two ways. First one is LinkedIn. You can definitely send me a connection invite and make a reference to this interview on there, and would love to connect and could set up a conversation from there. You can also email directly. You can reach me at Drew, DREW, at OpDecision.com, and that's spelled O, P as in Paul, and then the word decision, DECISION. And either way, be able to connect and start a conversation.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Drew. If anybody listening to this wants to reach out, definitely recommend connecting with you. Thanks so much for being on the show, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.